Joining us now on the line is Eli Lake from the Daily Beast. He is, of course, the senior national security correspondent for the Daily Beast, and a man who's been following, no doubt like the rest of Washington has been, this Bo Bergdahl story. Okay, so I'm reading a lot of stuff. I mean, Eli, I can't recall a story that has so many facets in quite a while. There's the thing about Capitol Hill being upset. There's the thing about people who served with him being upset and military veterans being upset. There's the whole thing about did we make a good trade. As you look at this story, what are the elements that you feel are worthy of the most exploration?
At this point, I think everybody wants to know, as best as we can tell, with due respect for a man who's just spent 5 years in captivity from the Haqqani network, what exactly happened? Did he leave the base because he was fed up with the war, and as there was one version of it that he was going to walk to India? Did he leave the base because he, was drunk or was inebriated? All of that, and then what happened? How did he get captured? What did he do when he was captured? We assume, because we're talking about the Haqqani network and the Taliban, that he probably was tortured. Why was he shaved down when the special operations guys finally got him? And this incredible story from, I think, Time Magazine, which says the Taliban made him a special tunic because there was a sign of respect. They wanted him to have good memories. What happened to him?
Yeah.
And I'm not prejudging it, because I think it's possible when you're in captivity like that, you can get Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Or when you're in activity like that, it's possible that he tried to escape twice. That story of his captivity, if he can remember it and tell it, and it can be investigated, that to me is a fascinating story.
Well, and as a fan of the series Homeland, it really rings true for me as well. Anyone who watches that show, you're seeing it play out before our eyes. But Eli, my biggest focus these days have been these 5 Gitmo detainees. They've been called the Taliban Dream Team. And the president, when he was in Poland and challenged about the release of these, he told the American people and the entire world this.
In terms of potential threats, the release of the Taliban who were being held in Guantanamo was conditioned on the Qataris keeping eyes on them and creating a structure in which we can monitor their activities. We will be keeping eyes on them.
Yeah, well, Eli Lake, I read on your byline, thanks to your reporting at the Daily Beast, that's not necessarily not such a confident belief that we have at this point.
The Qatari government, for years, has been a source of concern for the U.S. intelligence community because it is a place where it's easy to raise money for Al-Qaeda and also Hamas and other assorted terrorist organizations. Period, bottom line. A year ago, a very young emir ascended to the throne after his father abdicated it. There is a great hope he will be more of a reformer. But in 2008, when his dad was the emir of Qatar, there was another less important Gitmo detainee who, was said to have attended before 9/11 an Al-Qaeda training camp, and may or may not have wired money to his brother, who may or may not have been a sleeper agent in the United States. There were still a lot of questions about him. He was transferred to Qatar. There was explicit exchange of diplomatic notes to say, don't allow him to travel. Within 4 or 5 months, he was allowed to travel. He went to the United Kingdom and appeared on a kind of speaking tour with a group called Caged Prisoners, which has former Gitmo detainees who I have been told, who are likely exaggerating their stories and are still very much kind of committed to a really hardline ideology. The point being, it was an abrogation of their agreement, and there are cables, U.S. diplomatic cables, first obviously disclosed by WikiLeaks, that lay it all out there. They think they were lied to in 2008. This time, the president has a direct promise from, the king of that country, and we'll see if this time they fulfill their promise. The other important point, the Qatari Security Service would approve anything the U.S. does kind of unilaterally to monitor them. So any kind of surveillance package or anything like that would be approved by the Qatari security services.
Right.
And that is also a source of concern for many of my sources who I talk to.
You know, as a national security correspondent, you no doubt follow the actions and the words of the national security advisor to the president, Susan Rice. And she went out on national TV this past weekend and said that, look, this whole thing, this Bo Bergdahl thing, well, he served with honor and distinction. There is absolutely no way she could have actually not known all of the talk about desertion. Does she have, as a spokesman for the president, as an advisor to the president, does she have any credibility left whatsoever in this town?
Well, that's a very tough assessment, and it's a very good question about Susan Rice. The one thing I would say is it appears that she is sort of the front person of a larger White House PR campaign to emphasize the element of this story that is America does not allow, brings home every last soldier from a war that is winding down. But anybody, you had so many people almost simultaneously who served with him speak out now that he's home, because there was a non-disclosure agreement about this. They all had to sign, saying, we served with this guy, and at the very best, he was a deserter, and some were alleging far darker things at that point, saying that 6 people were killed from his company when they were looking for him in Paktia province. And there's a lot of anger about that. You walk off the base, he became the top priority instead of the top priority being fulfilling the beginning of the counterinsurgency plan from General McChrystal. And that's something that I think they really miscalculated. But the other part that they miscalculated, I think, is that there are a lot of people, I think, who served in Afghanistan, or there's some people who served in Afghanistan who become very disillusioned with the war and disillusioned with the entire concept of the war, that there was any solution you could bring democracy or stable institutions to Afghanistan. But there are still lots of people who volunteer for the military who believe that they were defending, and as I would say, I agree with this, obviously, that by killing Taliban, by working with locals against the Haqqani network and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and doing all of this, that they were defending the American people, and they were defending, the world in some ways. And for 5 senior Taliban figures, commanders, people who had very high positions in the Taliban before 9/11, to be traded for somebody who believed, according to his own emails, that the American military was kind of a criminal gang of thugs, is offensive, I think, to a lot of people who volunteer for our volunteer military.
Well, Eli, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your perspective. Greatly appreciated.